Hi there, so nice to meet you again. Magic Treehouse, Fact Tracker, Knights and Castles. Let's see. Chapter 6 Knights. Medieval mysteries of the same styles that told stories of heroes and their adventures. The heroes were over brave and bold and fair. The heroes were knights. Knights have different names in different countries. In Spain, they were called caballeros. In Germany, they were called ritters. In France, they are called chevaliers. All these words mean the same thing: horsemen. Knights were soldiers who fought on horseback. Becoming a knight. It took years of training to become a knight. It also took a lot of money. Horses and armor were very expensive. So most knights came from wealthy, noble families. A boy who wanted to be a knight started his training when he was about 7 years old. At that time, his parents sent him to live in a lord's castle. He became a page. The page served the lord's family their meals. He learned manners. He learned battle skills and fighting with wooden swords and riding on wooden horses. Look. Wow, Jack could be a page. When a page was about 14, he became a squire. The squire was an apprentice to a knight. A squire took care of his knight's horses. He polished the knight's weapons and armor. If a knight were called to war, his squires went with him. A squire had to be ready to fight beside his knight on the battlefield, so he practiced fighting with real swords and other weapons. Most important, he practiced his horsemanship. A squire had to learn to ride a horse without using his hands. On the battlefield, he would need both hands to hold his weapon and shield. Most squires became knights at about age 21. They were usually knighted at a dubbing ceremony. The squire could be dubbed or knighted by his father or by the knight who trained him. A squire from a very important family might even be doubled by the king himself. Look at this picture. At the dubbing ceremony, the new knight promised to be brave and loyal. He swore to protect his lord, his king, and his church. Becoming a knight, page, squire, dubbing ceremony, knight. The code of chivalry. In the age of Middle Ages, knights also promised to have good manners. They had to be fair to all people. They had to protect the weak. They had to be generous. They had to honor and respect women. These rules came to be called the code of chivalry. In real life, knights could be ruthless and cruel, but by the minstrel songs of heroes reminded them of the code of chivalry and how they had promised to behave. Turn the page to read about the most famous knights of all, King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table. During the Middle Ages, the most popular stories about knights were Tale of King Arthur and his Kingdom of Camelot. They were make-believe stories, but they may have been based on a real king who lived in Britain for the 6th century. One of the most famous stories about King Arthur is the sword in the stone. In the story, people of Britain found a stone with a sword thrust into it. Writing on the stone says, "Whoever can pull the sword from the stone is the true king of Britain." A young page named Arthur is the only one who can pull the sword out of the stone. The person who put the sword in the stone was Merlin, a magician. After Arthur is crowned king, Merlin becomes his most trusted advisor. Merlin helps Arthur start the Knights of Round Table. Arthur's knights gather at the table that is round, so each knight place has the same worth. Two of the most famous knights of the Round Table is Sir Lancelot and Sir Galahad. They both live at the highest ideals of code of chivalry. The two important women in the stories of King Arthur are Queen Guinevere and Morgan Le Fay. Guinevere is the beautiful wife of King Arthur. Morgan Le Fay is a half-sister of King Arthur. She learns magic skills from Merlin, such as how to fly and how to change her shape. Here's a full plate armor. Look. Armor. Chapter 7, Armor. As part of the dubbing ceremony, a new knight was often given a suit of armor. Armor is a metal covering that protected a knight from his enemies' weapons. Armor was heavy, it was hot, but it was hard to put on and take off. But it was the best protection a knight could have when he went to battle. The earliest armor was made of small metal rings all linked together. The linked rings are called mail. Mail was the first popular in the 11th century. This kind of armor is often called chainmail because the rings are linked like a chain. Look. Knights going into battle wore a mail coat or a hauberk. A hauberk was a good protection against the sharp edges of a sword, and when a knight could be stabbed through the mail rings with a thin dagger. Hauberks were so heavy that knights who wore them had to wear padded underwear. He could also be shot with an arrow, or have his bones smashed into a heavy club. To be better protect themselves, some knights started stamping steel plates over these nail armors. Steel plates were much better protection than mail rings. By the 14th, most knights no longer wore mail at all. Instead, they wore steel plate armor that covered them from head to toe. Helmets. One of the most important pieces of a knight's armor was his helmet. Like all armor, helmets changed over time. The earliest helmets were simply steel hats with nose guards. Look at this one. Latest helmets look like upside-down buckets with eye holes. They were called helms. Look at this. In the 14th century, knights began wearing helmets called bassinets. Bassinets fit more closely to the knight's head. Most have visors that moved up and down. That way, the knight could see better when he wasn't fighting. Here. Tournament helmets were sometimes very fancy and heavy. Some tournament helmets weighed over 40 pounds. Look at this beautiful helmet. A suit of armor. There were so many pieces, full suit of steel armor that it could take over an hour to night to get dressed. Knights in full armor even wore steel gloves and steel shoes. Horses wore armor too, a horse armor called a bard. Look at this picture. Here. Head plates, helmet, chest and back plates, shoulder plates, arm plates, gloves, foot plates, collar plates, tie plates, neck plates, chest plates. Jack and Andy presents the start of Halverdry. Helmets hit knights safest, so knights wore big badges to tell each other apart on the battlefield. The badges are called coats of arms. The first knights could choose anything they wanted for the coat of arms. A knight might pick a lion to show bravery, or a tree to show strength. Andy the oak, Jack the owl. Eventually, though, there weren't enough pictures to go around. Andy the sun, Jack the sun. Strict rules were made out who could use pictures. There were also rules about how pictures could be drawn. Andy the bluebird, Jack the jaguar. The person who checked to make sure the rules were being followed was a herald. The whole system of coats arms of a heraldry. Chapter 8, Weapons. Hey, don't worry about that. A knight carried many weapons into battle. His most important weapon was his sword. Look at this picture. His early swords were flat and wide. They had two sharp edges. They were called slashing swords. Armor did a good job of protecting knights from the sharp edges of slashing swords. So swords makers started making swords that were longer and more pointed than slashing swords. These swords are thrusting swords. The point of a thrusting sword could fit between steel plates or through the mail rings of armor. In the later Middle Ages, the whole point of the thrusting sword could fit between the steel plates or through the mail rings of an armor. Look at this. This is slashing sword. And This is trusting sword. And this one is hand and a half sword. The biggest one, longest one you see. In later Middle Ages, some knights carried swords that were so long and heavy they couldn't hold them in one hand. They were called hand and half swords. Hand and half swords could be nearly as tall as the knights who carried them. The knight's lance was nearly important as his sword. A lance was a very long pole with sharp steel points at the end. The knight on horseback held his lance in one hand and galloped towards his enemy. When he got close enough, he tried to stab his enemy or knock him off the horse with the lance. Yet, some of the whole line of knights charged an enemy with their lances. The knights had plenty of other weapons too. A flail was an iron bowl and chain attached to the handle. The bowl was covered with sharp spikes. A mace was a big club with a heavy steel head. A blow from a flail or mace could crush a knight's helmet and a knight's head and side. Knights are also fought in battle axes and war hammers. Battle axes has short handles and broad, sharp blades. A war hammer was a big hammer, a club, and a knife with all one. Shields. Carried along with the weapons, early knights also carried their large shields. The shields helped protect them against the weapons of their enemies. As armor got better, the shields got smaller. By the late 14th, most knights did not carry shield into battle at all. They only carried a special contest. These contests were often the biggest events of the year. They are called tournaments. Turn the page to attend the medieval tournament. Tournaments begin as practice for war. Knights fought each other in big teams. The battles were called melees. Melees are confusing, hardly any rules. It was hard to tell which team was winning, so tournaments began to feature two-man contest. The most popular two-man contest was the joust. In the joust, two knights tried to knock each other off their horses with lances. Now, Chapter 9, Battles and Sieges. Look at this picture. It's so lush. At tournaments, knights fought for glory and prizes. They went to war, they fought for their lives. Knights went to war for many reasons. Sometimes they fought to help their king get more land for his kingdom. Sometimes they fought to win back the land that they had been taken from their lord. Sometimes they traveled thousands of miles to fight wars for the church. When the knights fought their hardest battles close to home, they had to defend the lord's castle against enemy attack. Size. Sometimes the enemy would try to take over a castle by surprise. A castle in England was won in battle by soldiers hiding in a wagon full of hay. A more common way to try to take over a castle was siege. During the siege, enemy armies surrounded the castle. They kept people in the castle from coming out. They kept food and supplies from going in. The attacking army tried very hard to get inside the castle. They often built special weapons to help them. These weapons were called siege engines. Some siege engines were huge. The biggest was called a belfry. A belfry was a rolling tower. It was tall as the castle walls. It could hold hundreds of soldiers. During a siege, an enemy army would roll to the belfry up to the castle walls. They would open the top. The soldiers inside would climb out and try to go over the battlements. Another siege engine was battery ram. The battery ram was a big, heavy log. The enemy pounded along against the castle weights of goals, trying to smash them down. Catapults were like giant slingshots. They could throw a big boulder at the castle walls, and also throw boulders over the walls at the people inside. Catapults tossed over the castle walls. Sometimes an attacking army threw dead animals inside the castle. They hoped the animals could spread disease. Some even threw dead people, defending the castle. Of course, the people inside the castle didn't just sit there while outside was going on. They worked very hard at attacking the attackers. Guards shot arrows from the battlements and towers. If the attackers got close enough, the guards dropped rocks and logs down on their head. Sometimes they poured boiling water or hot oil down to them. There were often secret passages inside the castle. Some of the passages had floors and holes in them. The holes were called murder holes. During an attack, guards hid in the passage. They shot arrows and dropped rocks through the murder holes if an enemy walked below. The end of a siege. Siege often went for many months. If the enemy army never got inside the castle, they would still win the siege. If a siege went on long enough, the people inside the castle would starve to death. Most sieges ended before that happened. Sometimes the people inside the castle were surrounded. The attacked enemy then took over the castle and all the land around it. When an enemy took over a castle, they usually held the lord's family and the other nobles inside for a ransom. That means they could keep the prisoners until someone paid for their release. Sometimes, of course, people in the castle defeated the enemy. Most castles had secret doors that led outside. Soldiers could sneak out the secret doors and take the enemy by surprise. Sometimes the king and other lords sent help. His army of knights might rescue people inside the castle. If the enemy was defeated, they could be killed, held for ransom, or thrown in the dungeon. The dungeon. The dungeon was prison in the dark, damp basement of the castle. Prisoners in the dungeon might be chained into the walls all day and all night. Sometimes they were left to starve to death in their chains. Look at this bad picture. 10. The end of the Age of Castles. The Age of Castles lasted nearly 500 years. Eventually, though, people stopped wanting to live in castles. Castles were dark, they were drafty, they were dirty, they were not built for comfort. They could be built for defense against weapons of lurid enemies. As time went by, new weapons were invented. The most powerful of these weapons was the cannon. Cannons were first used in Europe in the 1530s. As the 14th, most armies used cannons when they attacked the castle. Cannons could fire heavy stones or iron balls against castle walls with great force. Even the strongest castle could not stand up against a cannon fire for long. In the late Middle Ages, armies started using cannons on the battlefield too. At the same time, soldiers started carrying guns, a nice armor and sword with no match for cannonballs and bullets. A feudal system began to break down. Kings began training full-time armies to defend their kingdom. By the end of the Middle Ages, hardly any new castles were being built, and the knight battling shining armor eventually became a thing in the past. Knights and castles today. Knights and castles lived on, but in stories and legends and in traditions that's still alive today. People still become knights, but the people who become knights today won't have to be good fighters. They don't even know how to ride a horse. Knights now is the title of king or queen can give to anyone who's done great service of his or her country. Many castles built centuries ago are still standing. People from all over the world visit the castles every year. But a castle often has displays forever. Weapons, clothes, and other things from the Middle Ages. When you visit one of the castles, you cross the drawbridge into the other side. You can touch the stones carved by masons of hundreds of years ago. You can walk in the battlements where the castle guard kept watch of the enemy army. You can sit in the great hall where pages serve lord and lady this meal on silver plates. Oh dear, but that's all the book. It's the whole book now, and it's the end of it. But tomorrow I'm going to a new book then. But bye, see you next time.